James was in his spacious office, surrounded by papers and memories of the past. The grand mansion he had inherited from his parents seemed to echo his solitude, each room a silent reminder of his reclusive and introverted life. On this particular day, as twilight cast long shadows through the wide office windows, something unusual caught his attention. Through the window, he spotted a figure subtly out of place in the usual landscape of his meticulously maintained garden. A woman, whose appearance seemed worn by time and circumstances, was rummaging through the trash cans near the side gate. Her clothes were worn and she moved with a hesitation that spoke of fatigue and need. James watched her for a moment, initially more annoyed than concerned. After all, his property rarely attracted uninvited visitors, let alone someone who seemed to have nothing to lose. However, as he observed her, his initial irritation gave way to a feeling of curiosity mixed with a twinge of empathy. He murmured to himself, his voice resonating softly in the office walls. What could she be looking for? Food, something of value. Unable to turn away from the scene, James moved closer to the window, his gaze fixed on the woman who was now rummaging with more urgency. The twilight light softly illuminated her disheveled hair, and something about the way she moved, a certain hopelessness mixed with determination, touched James's heart. Driven by a sudden decision, he left the office and descended the marble staircase. As he opened the front door, the cool night breeze brought with it the faint scent of jasmine from the garden, a striking contrast to the scene he was about to confront. Crossing the dew-moistened lawn, James approached the woman quietly. When he was just a few steps away, he called out in a firm yet careful voice, "Excuse me, can I help with something?" The woman was startled, clearly not expecting to be approached. She turned quickly, her brown eyes meeting James's in a mix of surprise and fear. For a moment, she seemed to weigh her options, swaying slightly as if the weight of her decision could topple her. I was just looking for something to eat," she confessed, her voice a tremulous whisper. "I didn't mean to cause any trouble." James felt a pang of compassion. He studied her face. There was a raw honesty he could not ignore. "It's unusual to find visitors here at this hour," he said, trying to soften the tone. "Come on, let's find something for you to eat inside. It's not safe to be out here with the night chill approaching." She hesitated, clearly struggling with distrust and need. Finally, with an almost imperceptible nod, she agreed, following James as he guided her back to the mansion, their silhouettes merging with the shadows that the night brought. This unexpected encounter was just the beginning of a series of events that would unravel mysteries and change lives. But at that moment, as the front door closed behind them, neither could foresee how deeply their stories would intertwine. The morning after the unexpected encounter, James woke up with a strange feeling, a mix of curiosity and concern that had troubled him throughout the night. After a quick breakfast, he found himself again looking out the office window, his eyes scanning the garden, searching for the figure that had so captured his interest. To his surprise, there she was again, the same mysterious woman, Katie, who the day before had seemed so desperate. She was sitting by the trash cans, motionless, as if the world around her had stopped. Her body seemed fragile, wrapped in a coat far too thin for the morning chill. The scene stirred James in a way he hadn't anticipated. He felt a tightness in his heart at seeing someone in such a state of abandonment, right outside his opulent home. Dressing quickly, he descended the stairs, each step loaded with decision. As he approached, he called out in a gentle voice, trying not to startle her again. "Katie, are you all right?" She looked up, and there was a flicker of recognition, but also clear hesitation. I just needed to think a little," she murmured, her voice weak and tremulous. James crouched beside her, observing her with concern. "Did you spend the night here? It's not safe, nor healthy for you." Katie looked at the ground, avoiding his gaze. "I didn't want to be a bother inside. I don't know how long I can stay, so I thought—" "No, that's not acceptable," James interrupted, his decision firm in his voice. "You can't stay out here. Come on, get up. You need a hot bath and more food." There was a silence between them, a moment loaded with unspoken emotions. Finally, Katie accepted James's outstretched hand and got up with difficulty. He guided her back inside the house, each of their steps marked by mutual caution. As they walked, James couldn't help but feel he was doing the right thing. The woman needed help, and something within him called to take on this responsibility, perhaps as a way to fill the void his own loneliness had created. Once inside, he directed Katie to the bathroom, where hot water and clean clothes awaited her. As she showered, James prepared something for them to eat, his mind spinning with questions about who she was and what had brought her to him. When Katie reappeared, looking somewhat more composed, they sat down to eat. The initial silence was broken by James, who gently started a conversation. "You might not remember everything, Katie, but anything you feel comfortable sharing, I'm here to listen," he said, offering an encouraging smile. Katie hesitated, then began to speak slowly, revealing fragments of her memory. James listened intently, knowing that each word was a step towards understanding the mysterious woman who had appeared so unexpectedly in his life. While Katie rested in the spare room, James's house remained enveloped in an almost palpable silence, broken only by the occasional sounds of birds in the garden. James's concern and curiosity led him to pace back and forth in the living room, anxiously waiting for any sign that Katie was okay. Finally, the bedroom door opened slowly, and Katie appeared in the doorway, looking somewhat revitalized, though still visibly confused. Her eyes swept the hallway as if trying to orient herself in an unfamiliar world. "Are you feeling better?" James asked, approaching cautiously. She nodded slightly, her lips trembling as she formed a response. "Yes, thank you. I only remember my name. Katie. I don't know how I ended up here, or even who I am." James gently guided her to the living room, where the soft daylight filtered through heavy curtains, casting a warm glow on the antique furniture. "Let's sit here. You can eat something while we talk. Maybe it will help clear your mind," he suggested, indicating the comfortable sofa near the fireplace. Katie followed him hesitantly, taking a seat on the sofa. James brought her a plate of some fruits and a glass of water, watching her as she ate slowly, lost in thought. "Do you have no memories of anything before waking up here?" James inquired, trying not to sound too insistent. She shook her head, frowning in frustration. "It's like there's just emptiness before today. I know I must have a life somewhere, but it's all so foggy." "I understand how disturbing it must be," James said, his voice soft. "Perhaps there's something we can do to help recover your memories. We could start with simple things. Music, maybe. Some people find that it can awaken dormant memories." Katie seemed to consider this for a moment before nodding. "That would be good, I think." James stood up and selected a soft classical music piece on the sound system. The first notes of a piano began to fill the room, melodious and soothing. As the music played, Katie closed her eyes, letting herself be carried away by the melody. James watched, hopeful that this simple action might trigger something in her memory. After a few minutes, Katie opened her eyes, a look of perplexity crossing her face. I feel a familiarity with this music. I can't explain it, but it seems important." "That's a good sign," James encouraged. "Perhaps if we continue to explore different music, more things will come to light." They spent the afternoon in this endeavor, exploring various musical tracks, each chosen in the hope of unraveling a fragment of Katie's past. James felt increasingly involved in this unexpected journey alongside Katie, determined to help her recover her lost history. As the day gave way to night, and the light in the room began to dim under the influence of the twilight, James knew that the next step would be crucial. They would need to dive deeper into the mysteries of Katie's mind, exploring new ways to unlock her forgotten memories. The night had comfortably settled over the mansion when James decided to take Katie to his mother's old music room. The idea had come on a whim, almost a casual suggestion during their musical exploration, that perhaps a personal object might act as a catalyst for Katie's memories. "My mother used to spend hours in here," James explained as he guided Katie down the corridor adorned with family photos and classic artworks. "She loved music more than anything." Katie observed everything with subdued curiosity. Each object and each painting seemed to evoke a subtle emotion, a sense of distant familiarity that she couldn't fully comprehend. As they reached the door to the music room, James hesitated for a moment before opening it, a wave of nostalgia enveloping him. The room still retained the scent of polished wood and varnish, a silent testament to private concerts and long afternoons of practice. "This was her sanctuary," said James, turning on the lights. The old chandelier cast a soft light over the grand piano that dominated the center of the room. Katie approached the piano with reverent hesitation, her hands trembling slightly as she touched the polished surface of the instrument. "You can play if you want," James encouraged, watching her closely. Katie looked at him, visible uncertainty in her eyes, but then she nodded. She slowly sat down on the piano bench, adjusting her position. For a moment, she just sat still, her hands suspended in the air above the keys. Then, with an almost inaudible sigh, her fingers fell onto the keys, and a soft yet incredibly complex melody began to flow through the room. James was spellbound. The music was delicate and moving, filled with nuances and passion he had rarely heard. Katie played with a skill that seemed beyond that of a mere amateur. There was a refined technique in her execution, a familiarity with the instrument that could only come from years of practice. "Katie, you're incredible," James said, his voice full of admiration and surprise. "Have you played before?" Katie reduced the intensity of the music, turning the melody into a gentle murmur before stopping completely. She looked at her hands as if they were strangers to her, then at James, a confused expression on her face. "I don't know," she answered sincerely. "I don't remember learning to play, but it feels right. It's as if my hands just know what to do." James moved closer, sitting beside her on the bench. "This is more than just knowing. It's as if you and the piano are old friends reconnecting." Katie smiled, a spark of emotion passing through her eyes. "Maybe I was a pianist," she joked, but there was a layer of truth behind the suggestion. They spent the rest of the evening exploring different musical pieces, each note played by Katie bringing a new wave of wonderment and a series of questions about who she might have been before losing her memory. James realized that this night was just the beginning of a new phase in his quest to help Katie rediscover her identity. The piano, a legacy from his mother, now served as a mysterious bridge to Katie's forgotten past, promising even deeper revelations as her innate ability continued to emerge. The revelation of Katie's musical talent in the old music room had left an indelible mark on both of them. While the notes from the piano still softly echoed through the mansion walls, James felt a bond growing between them, forged by music and the mystery surrounding the young woman without memories. The next day, as they had breakfast together in the spacious kitchen lit by the first rays of sunlight, James broke the comfortable silence that had settled between them. "Katie, about last night. It was extraordinary. I would like to offer you the opportunity to stay here longer if you want," said James, hesitant, measuring his words carefully. Katie looked at him, surprise and gratitude shining in her eyes. "Are you sure? I don't want to be a burden." James smiled, running a hand through his hair in a gesture of ease. "It's no burden at all. In fact, I think we can help each other. You, with your music, have brought something to this house that I haven't felt in a long time: life. I would really love to stay. I feel strangely at home here," Katie confessed, a shadow of a smile touching her lips. "Great. And I think we can use music as a way to explore more of your past. Who knows what more we might discover together?" James proposed, his enthusiasm becoming evident. In the days that followed, James and Katie spent several hours in the music room, exploring different genres and pieces. Katie seemed naturally inclined towards classical music, but she also showed an aptitude for jazz and even some modern pieces. Each session seemed to bring out a new aspect of her personality, as she became more comfortable and open about her impressions and feelings. "Do you think I was a professional pianist?" Katie asked one afternoon as they rested on the sofa after an intense music session. "It could be," James replied, pondering. "You have a very refined technique, and it seems so natural for you. But whatever you were, it's clear that music is a fundamental part of who you are." "It's strange," Katie said, looking at her own hands as if they held the answers. "Music makes me feel complete, even though I don't remember my own past. It's like each note played helps me rebuild a part of myself that was lost." "That's wonderful to hear, Katie. And perhaps, through music, we can find more clues," James suggested, always hopeful. And so, each day became an opportunity for new discoveries. James found in Katie not just companionship for his solitude, but also an enigma he was determined to solve. He began to make plans to seek experts who could help Katie recover her memory, considering psychologists, therapists, and even neurologists. Meanwhile, Katie continued to express her emotions and fragmented memories through music, each note played strengthening the bond that united them and paving the way for the next step in their shared journey of discovery. With the decision to help Katie recover her memory more firmly established, James dedicated himself to this goal with renewed vigor. Transforming his office into a kind of headquarters, he equipped the space with everything that might be necessary. Notebooks for taking notes, a laptop for research, and a variety of books on amnesia and memory recovery. On a rainy afternoon, with the sound of the drops rhythmically beating against the windows, James called Katie to join him in the office. The weather outside brought a quiet introspection, perfect for the investigations they intended to conduct. "Katie, I've thought a lot about how we can approach this," James began, indicating a comfortable chair in front of his desk. "It won't be easy and might be frustrating at times, but I'm here with you every step of the way." Katie nodded, an expression of gratitude mixed with determination on her face. "Thank you, James. Just knowing I'm not alone in this is a great comfort." They started with the basics, checking social media, public records, and even databases of missing persons. James taught Katie how to use the computer, guiding her hands over the keyboard and mouse as they typed in names and potential connections. "Do you remember any names, places, or events that might be related to you?" James asked as they navigated through different web pages. Katie furrowed her brow, concentrated. "I'm not sure. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see flashes of a big city, bright lights, but it's all very vague." "And about music, you mentioned feeling a special connection to certain melodies. Maybe we can explore that further. There might be places you frequented, music schools, or concerts you attended," James suggested, opening a new search tab. Hours passed as they examined every possible clue. James recorded everything meticulously, hopeful yet also realistic about the challenges they faced. Despite progress in other areas, the search for Katie's identity seemed to stagnate. No records matched the limited information they had. "It's like looking for a needle in a haystack," Katie murmured, frustrated, leaning back in her chair and massaging her temples. "We won't give up," James assured, his voice firm. "There are other ways to approach this. Perhaps it's time to consider professional help. We can talk to memory experts, doctors who may have methods we don't know about." Katie looked at him, a glimmer of hope reigniting in her eyes. "Do you think that could work?" "It's worth a try," James responded. "And I will be with you, no matter what happens." Encouraged by James's words, Katie smiled, feeling a wave of gratitude for having found someone willing to help her face the unknown. They decided that the next day they would make a list of potential experts and clinics they could visit, opening a new chapter in the search for answers. The determination of both was clear, and as the days slowly turned into night, they knew that each small step brought them closer to the truth, however elusive it seemed. Katie's journey to discover her past was just beginning, and the next step would be to explore new approaches and specialties, in hopes of finding the keys to unlock her forgotten story. The following morning found James and Katie seated at the kitchen table, surrounded by stacks of papers and an open laptop, meticulously planning the next big step, Katie's public debut. James, with a determined look, discussed the details while Katie listened, a mix of nervousness and excitement evident in her expression. "I think a recital would be the perfect way to reintroduce you to the world," James suggested, flipping through a notebook filled with notes and potential venues. "What if we choose a central location where people who might know you can easily attend?" Katie bit her lip, considering the idea. "What if no one who knows me shows up? What if I'm not ready for this?" James offered an encouraging smile. "Katie, you have an incredible talent that deserves to be shared. Besides, this might be just what we need to trigger some memory or prompt someone who knows you to come forward. I'll be there with you, for every note you play." With the plan in action, they chose a well-known theater in the city, a place with an intimate atmosphere yet still offering a respectable stage for a piano recital. James took care of the organization, booking the venue and promoting the event on social media and in the local community, describing it as the return of a mysterious pianist. In the days leading up to the recital, Katie practiced incessantly, each piece chosen not just for its beauty but also for its ability to evoke deep emotions both in the pianist and her audience. James watched, often captivated by the intensity of the music, amazed at her progress. Finally, the big day arrived. The theater was modestly filled, an audience composed of music lovers, local curious individuals, and a few journalists who had heard rumors about the mysterious pianist. Backstage, Katie took deep breaths, trying to calm her nerves. James approached, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice soft. "I think so," Katie replied, forcing a smile. "It's now or never, right?" "Exactly. And remember, no matter what happens, I'm proud of you." With those words of encouragement, Katie walked onto the stage. The lights dimmed, and a soft spotlight illuminated the grand piano at the center. She sat down, adjusted the bench, and placed her hands on the keys. Then, with the room in expectant silence, she began to play. The music flowed, each note a testament to her journey and struggle. The pieces chosen ranged from tranquil classics to complex compositions full of emotion. The audience was immersed, some moved to tears, others simply in awe. As the recital neared its end, James watched from the wings, attentive to any sign of recognition on the faces of the spectators. Each applause, each appreciative glance at Katie was a victory, but the real hope was that someone in the audience might truly know the story behind the talented pianist. As the last note of the final piece echoed through the theater, Katie stood up, the applause of the audience enveloping her like a warm embrace. Looking at the faces in the crowd, she tried to see any sign, any recognition. James joined her on stage, his gaze also scanning the audience, searching for that face that might bring the answers they so desperately sought. The night ended without a definitive revelation, but not without hope. As they thanked the last members of the audience who approached to congratulate Katie, both knew that the journey was far from over. The next step would be crucial, involving more people, more attentive eyes, and possibly the key to Katie's past. After the last note of Katie's performance in the theater had faded into the air, the audience slowly began to disperse, wrapped in murmurs of admiration and warm applause. James and Katie remained near the stage, greeting spectators who approached to express their congratulations and admiration for the talent revealed that night. As Katie smiled, timidly thanking them for the compliments, a middle-aged man with disheveled hair and thick-framed glasses struggled to make his way through the crowd to her. His face showed a mix of emotion and disbelief that caught James's attentive eye. "Katie," the man called out, his voice trembling slightly with emotion. Katie turned to him, a look of confusion crossing her face. "Yes. Can I help you?" "It's me, Johnny. Johnny Miller. We were friends, Katie. Don't you remember me?" Johnny asked, approaching with tears glistening in his eyes. The crowd around them began to pay attention to the conversation, feeling the tension and emotion of the moment. Katie looked to James, seeking some kind of confirmation or support, before turning her attention back to Johnny. "I'm sorry. I've lost my memory. I don't remember much before now. Johnny took a deep breath, clearly trying to keep his composure. I understand, Katie. It's just that, when I saw your name on the poster for the recital, I could hardly believe it. We thought you were missing, Katie completed for him, a sudden sadness darkening her eyes. Yes, Johnny nodded, gently taking her hand. You disappeared almost 3 years ago. There were no signs, no clues. Your parents were devastated. We all were. James intervened, recognizing the need to manage the situation carefully. Johnny, it seems you have a lot to share with Katie. Maybe we can sit somewhere more quiet. Of course, Johnny quickly agreed. I have so many questions, and maybe some answers for you, Katie. They moved to a small, cozy cafe near the theater, where they could talk more privately. Johnny began to tell Katie about her past, about how close they were, about her parents, and about the life she had before her disappearance. Katie listened intently, each piece of information a precious fragment that she tried to fit into her fragmented mind. You were a promising pianist, Katie. We all knew you were going places. But then, after that night, after your last recital, you just vanished, Johnny explained, his voice choked with emotion. Katie held James's hand, seeking some comfort in his presence as Johnny's revelations triggered a storm of emotions and questions within her. As the night deepened, so did their conversation, becoming increasingly dense and revealing. They decided they would need more time, more meetings like that one to fully unravel what had happened to Katie. And as they planned their next meeting, it became clear that the path ahead would be both challenging and potentially transformative, promising not just revelations about Katie's past, but also about who she was, and who she could become again. The soft light of the cafe illuminated the tense and expectant faces of Katie, James, and Johnny as they settled at a reserved table in the corner, away from the curious ears of other customers. The intimate atmosphere facilitated the difficult and dense conversation that unfolded. Johnny, with a look mixed with relief and sadness, began to unravel Katie's story in more detail. You were at the peak of your career, Katie. We had just returned from a tour across Europe, where you were applauded at every performance. Your talent was undeniable, and we all knew you were on your way to stardom. Katie absorbed every word, every fragment of her past that Johnny revealed. And my parents? She asked, her voice trembling with the emotion of discussing a family she couldn't remember. They supported you unconditionally, Johnny responded, his eyes misty as he recalled. Your father was your biggest fan, and your mother always took care of all the backstage details. The last time I saw you, we were all celebrating your success at a party after the concert. But after that night, you disappeared. No one knew what had happened. It was as if the earth had swallowed you up. James, observing the interaction, interjected with a crucial question. Was there any clue? Anything the police found that could help us understand what happened? Johnny shook his head. Nothing. The police investigated, of course, but there were no signs of struggle, no note, nothing. It was all very clean. That made us all the more worried. There were theories, of course, but nothing concrete. Theories? Katie echoed, curious and eager for more information. Yes, some people thought maybe you had been taken by someone you met on the tour, or that you might have left on your own to escape the pressure, Johnny explained. But none of that made sense to those who really knew you. You loved your music, your family, your friends. There was no reason for you to just disappear. As they spoke, James took meticulous notes, knowing that every detail might be the key to unraveling the mystery of Katie's disappearance. Johnny's account not only shed light on Katie's past, but also raised more questions that needed answers. We'll need all the police records, anything that can give us a clue, James said, already thinking about the next steps. I can help with that, Johnny offered. I have some contacts who might still have access to the case. I'll do what I can. Grateful, Katie briefly held Johnny's hand, a gesture of appreciation for not being alone anymore in this journey to unravel her own past. The conversation continued into the afternoon, with Johnny sharing stories of their days together, trying to ignite some dormant memory in Katie. As the afternoon turned into evening, they knew the journey was far from over. They agreed to meet again, armed with more information and, hopefully, more pieces to complete the puzzle of Katie's life before her disappearance. As they prepared to say goodbye, Katie felt a mix of hope and determination, ready to face whatever the future held in her quest for the truth. As the case unfolded with new information brought by Johnny, James and Katie met again in James's office, now transformed into a command center for the investigation of Katie's past. Johnny had brought with him a folder of files containing copies of police reports and witness statements from the time of Katie's disappearance. With the documents spread out on the table, the three leaned in to examine each page with meticulous attention. It was during this thorough analysis that a name began to emerge repeatedly, standing out as a central figure in the events leading up to Katie's disappearance: Ramon, her former piano teacher. Ramon was always very demanding with Katie, but I didn't know he could have gone so far, Johnny explained, his voice laden with regret for not having recognized the signs earlier. He was recognized for his talent, but there were rumors about his difficult temperament and jealousy toward students he felt could surpass him. Katie, listening intently, felt a chill upon hearing the name. "I remember him," she suddenly said, a memory emerging from the shadows of her mind. "He was very strict, and I always felt as if he expected me to fail." James, following Katie's line of thought, asked, "Is there anything specific you remember that could help us understand what happened?" Katie closed her eyes, trying to capture fragments of memories that floated at the edge of her consciousness. "There was one night," she began slowly, her voice a trembling whisper, "after a recital where I received a lot of praise. He called me into his office. He seemed furious." Johnny interjected, his tone somber. "That was the night of your disappearance. I remember you were very nervous before the meeting. And after that, no one saw you again." The discussion was interrupted by James, who lifted a sheet of paper. Here it says an employee heard screams coming from Ramon's room that night. The police questioned him, but without concrete evidence and no body, they couldn't do much more. "He thought he had killed me?" Katie asked, her voice almost inaudible, the weight of the revelation falling on her. "It seems so," James confirmed. "Ramon had every reason to want to harm you, driven by jealousy and the fear of being overshadowed by your rising success." The atmosphere in the room became heavy with the gravity of the situation. Katie felt both shocked and relieved at the same time, finally beginning to understand what had happened to her. "What do we do now?" Katie asked, determined to face the past and find justice. "We go after him," James declared, his determination mirroring Katie's. "We'll gather more evidence and ensure that Ramon faces the consequences of his actions." Johnny agreed, adding, "I'm with you. Katie, you deserve justice, and we'll do everything to ensure that Ramon can't harm anyone else." Armed with new data and a renewed sense of purpose, they planned their next steps. As they arranged a meeting with the original detective on the case, Katie felt increasingly empowered, ready to confront the ghosts of her past and reclaim her future. The quest for the truth about that fateful night was just beginning, and Katie's determination to seek justice promised to unveil even more of the mysterious veil that had shrouded her life. James's office had become an epicenter of strategy and determination as he, Katie, and Johnny outlined a meticulous plan to expose Ramon and ensure he faced justice. With documents spread across the table and a whiteboard filled with notes and connections, the intensity of their mission was palpable. James began the session with a direct question, looking at Katie seriously. "Katie, are you sure about this? Once we start, we may uncover things that will be hard to face." Katie nodded, resolution clear in her eyes. "I need to know the truth, James. And he needs to pay for what he did, not just to me, but to anyone else he may have harmed. Then, the first step is to gather concrete evidence. "We need something more substantial than what we have now to take to the police," James said, marking a plan of action on the board. Johnny, who had brought a list of Ramon's former colleagues and acquaintances, suggested, "We can start by interviewing some of the people who were close to Ramon at the time. Some of them might have noticed suspicious behaviors or even be witnesses to his actions." "Great idea, Johnny. And about the recital where it all happened, we can try to find more people who were there that night," added James. "Anyone who saw something might help us build a stronger case." Katie, though nervous, felt a wave of empowerment. "And what can I do?" "You can try to recover more of your memories. Any detail could be crucial. Maybe more sessions with music can help," James suggested, always aware of how music had been instrumental in recovering Katie's memories so far. With the plan in action, they spent the following days contacting potential witnesses and collecting statements. With each new testimony, the truth about Ramon began to form more clearly, a portrait of a man dominated by jealousy and envy, willing to do whatever necessary to maintain his prominent position. Meanwhile, Katie continued to work on her memories, each piano session unlocking fragments of her past. During one such session, a particular melody brought a flood of recollections, and she found herself remembering more clearly the night of her disappearance. "I remember. He was furious," Katie told James and Johnny one afternoon. "He said that if I couldn't be the best under his tutelage, then I wouldn't be the best under anyone else's." "That's a clear motive," James noted, recording every word. "Let's document this. It might be a key piece." With each piece of the puzzle fitting together, they felt they were getting closer to making Ramon answer for his actions. Their collaboration, marked by late-night meetings and intense discussions, had not only strengthened their resolve but also deepened their bonds. Finally, with a robust dossier in hand and several witnesses ready to speak, James, Katie, and Johnny were prepared to take the next step. They scheduled a meeting with a detective who had originally worked on Katie's case, ready to reopen the investigation with the new evidence. As they prepared for this crucial meeting, they knew they were on the brink of a decisive moment. What happened next could finally bring justice for Katie and close a painful chapter of her life, paving the way for her healing and renewal. The tension was palpable as James, Katie, and Johnny finalized preparations for the concert that would serve as the setting for Ramon's trap. The plan was meticulous. Katie would perform publicly again, this time at an event they knew Ramon would not miss, given the growing buzz around the miraculous return of the pianist. "Are you sure you want to do this, Katie? It's risky, and Ramon can be unpredictable," James expressed his concern as they reviewed the details on the night before the concert. Katie nodded with determination, although her eyes betrayed the nervousness she felt. "I need to do this, James. Not just for me, but for anyone else he might harm in the future." Johnny, who was coordinating with the security team and the police, added, "Everything is arranged. The police will be in plain clothes in the audience. As soon as Ramon makes any suspicious move after the confrontation, they will intervene." The day of the concert arrived quickly, and the theater was full. The audience, a mix of music aficionados, press, and the curious, awaited the start of the show, unaware of the drama that would unfold. Ramon, identified upon entering, sat in the third row, directly in Katie's field of vision. As Katie began to play, her music filled the space with melancholic beauty, each note played with precision and emotion. James and Johnny, strategically positioned backstage, watched both Ramon's reaction and the movement of people in and out of the theater. Midway through the concert, during a planned pause, James approached the stage to make an announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here tonight. Allow me a moment to introduce a very special aspect of this event." Turning to Ramon, James continued with a firm voice, "Mr. Ramon, could you please join us on stage? We have some issues that need clarification." Ramon, clearly surprised and uncomfortable, hesitated. Meanwhile, two undercover police officers were already positioned near the aisles, ready to act. With the audience murmuring in confusion and curiosity, Ramon slowly stood up and began walking toward the stage. As soon as he stepped onto the stage, James confronted him directly. "Ramon, you are being accused of attacking Katie years ago, leading to her disappearance. How do you explain this?" Ramon stuttered, his facade of confidence crumbling. "This is absurd. I would never do such a thing." Before he could continue, the officers intervened. "Sir, you need to come with us to clarify a few things," one officer said, handcuffing him while another read him his rights. The audience watched, stunned, as Ramon was escorted out of the theater. Katie, though shaken by the intensity of the confrontation, felt a wave of relief and vindication. She knew this was just the beginning of the end of her long quest for justice. With Ramon in custody and the concert abruptly interrupted, James, Katie, and Johnny knew that the next steps would involve legal proceedings and possibly more revelations. But for now, they had achieved their immediate goal. Ramon was arrested, and the path to justice was finally open. After Ramon's arrest, a palpable sense of relief permeated the air. Katie, James, and Johnny gathered at the cafe that had become their place for planning and reflection. As they sat around their usual table, the weight of the previous weeks began to lessen, giving way to a renewed sense of hope and possibility. "You were incredibly brave, Katie," James said, admiring the strength she had shown throughout the process. "Not many could have maintained composure the way you did." Katie smiled, grateful for the constant support. "I couldn't have done it without you guys. But now, with Ramon being held accountable, I feel like I can finally look to the future without the weight of the past." Johnny, always the optimist of the group, enthusiastically agreed. "And what a bright future you have ahead of you, Katie. Your music touched many people that night, despite the circumstances. You're ready to take this to an international level." Inspired by Johnny's words and James's encouragement, Katie began to outline plans for her career. "I'd like to start a new tour, maybe begin in cities where I was supposed to play before my disappearance. It would be a way to pick up where I left off. And with the story you have to tell, the press and the public are going to love it," James added, already thinking about the possible headlines. "We'll make sure your story is heard, not just as a victim, but as the talented and resilient artist you are." In the following weeks, Katie worked tirelessly, with the help of James and Johnny, to organize the tour. They chose venues, arranged interviews, and prepared promotional material that highlighted not only Katie's triumphant return but also her inspiring journey of overcoming and justice. When the tour began, it was an instant success. Concert halls were packed in every city, with audiences eager to hear the pianist who had captured the world's attention not only for her music but for her incredible story of resilience. Acclaimed reviews began to appear in newspapers and music magazines, celebrating both Katie's piano skills and her courage to face the challenges of the past. "How do you feel, being an inspiration to so many people?" a reporter asked during a press conference. Katie reflected for a moment before responding. "It's an honor to play for people around the world and share not only my music but my story. If I can inspire someone to face their challenges or to pursue their dreams, then everything I went through will have been worth it." With each performance, Katie felt more empowered and more connected to her purpose. She was not just rebuilding her career, she was rebuilding her life, note by note, concert by concert. As the tour progressed, the future seemed bright. Katie knew there were still challenges ahead, but now she had newfound confidence and a support network that helped her face anything. And with her next concert in a particularly significant city on the horizon, Katie was ready to close one chapter of her life and begin another, full of hope and determination for the new experiences that awaited her. As Katie's tour gained momentum, her relationship with James also evolved. Long journeys between cities, hours of rehearsals, and planning became not just a shared routine but also moments of deep connection. Amid the organized chaos of their packed schedule, they both found comfort and mutual understanding, a support that transcended mere friendship. One quiet night, after a concert in Paris, they found themselves sitting in a small cafe near the Seine, the river reflecting the city lights like stars fallen from the sky. The conversation flowed freely between them, more personal and introspective than usual. Have you ever thought about what your life would be like if none of this had happened? James asked, watching a boat slowly pass by on the river. Katie sighed, looking at the calm waters. Sometimes. But knowing everything I've been through, I feel like maybe I wasn't meant to have a quiet life. And strangely, I'm grateful for that. The hardships showed me how strong I can be. And they brought you into my life. James smiled, gently touching her hand on the table. You changed me, Katie. Before I met you, I was just going through the motions. Now, I feel like I'm truly living. The air around them was charged with a palpable energy, a mix of gratitude and affection that only grew with each shared word. James, Katie began, hesitant, her gaze locked on his. I feel the same way. You saw me at my worst and still stood by my side. That means more than I can express. At that moment, the final barriers between them seemed to crumble. James held her hand more firmly, a gesture full of intention. Katie, what we're doing here, together, it's real. I want this to continue. I want to be by your side, not just as your friend or your manager, but as someone who loves you, truly. Katie's heart raced with James's words, and she felt a surge of emotion that only truth can bring. I love you too, James. In a way I never thought possible again. The confession sealed a new chapter in their lives. They spent the rest of the night walking along the banks of the Seine, talking about future plans, shared dreams, and what love meant to each of them. As the tour continued, their relationship grew, strengthened by shared experiences and challenges overcome together. Every city they visited, every stage they left behind, fortified the bond they had, making it deeper and more resilient. It was in Vienna, under the glow of the lights in a concert hall where Katie was about to perform, that James found her backstage, an eager smile on his face. He had a surprise for her, something that would further solidify the love they shared, preparing them for the next stage of their journey together. In Vienna, under the golden dome of one of the city's most prestigious concert halls, James waited backstage, holding something delicately wrapped in his hands. The atmosphere was imbued with the typical excitement of a performance night, but for James, the evening held an even more special meaning. Katie appeared, her eyes sparkling with pre-show adrenaline. Seeing her, James's heart warmed, a palpable reminder of how much she had transformed his life since he had found her. You look incredible, he said, admiring her as she approached. Katie smiled, lightly touching James's arm. Thank you. I'm nervous, but having you here makes everything easier. James took her hand, handing her the small package. Before you go on stage, I wanted to give you something. Something that symbolizes what you mean to me. Curious, Katie carefully unwrapped the gift. Inside, she found a delicate gold chain with a 4-leaf clover pendant. James, it's beautiful. Each leaf represents something, James explained, as he helped her put on the necklace. Hope, faith, love, and luck. You've brought all these things to me. Before you, I was, well, you know. Katie looked into his eyes, seeing the sincerity and vulnerability he rarely showed. I know, James. And you've changed my life too. You helped me find a purpose again, to feel like I belong somewhere. Together, we are stronger. In that moment, surrounded by the bustle of musicians and technicians preparing for the concert, they shared a tight embrace, a safe haven in each other's arms. You helped me combat my loneliness, my depression, James murmured, his words muffled against Katie's hair. And I hope I've brought something good to your life too. You've brought more than you can imagine, Katie replied, her voice choked with emotion. Not only did you help me rebuild my life, but you made everything shine brighter. This is love, isn't it? It is, James confirmed, knowing that this feeling had been the driving force behind every challenge they had faced together. As the call for the start of the concert sounded, Katie squeezed James's hand one last time before heading to the stage. Wish me luck, she said, a twinkle of anticipation in her eyes. Always, James responded, watching her walk to the stage, the woman he loved, the woman who had illuminated his life in ways he had never thought possible. As Katie performed, each note she played seemed to carry a bit of the magic they had created together. The audience was enchanted, but none more so than James, who saw not just the talented pianist but the woman who had become the center of his world. The night in Vienna was not just a demonstration of the power of music but also of the power of love, a theme that resonated not just in the concert hall but in every aspect of James and Katie's life. And as the last note of Katie's performance echoed through the hall, both knew they were ready to face anything the future held, together. After the concert in Vienna, Katie's career entered a meteoric trajectory. With James's unwavering support, each city they visited became a new opportunity for Katie to shine, her music resonating not just in concert halls but also in the hearts of a global audience that grew with each day. In London, under the golden lights of the Royal Albert Hall, Katie prepared backstage for one of the most significant performances of her career. James, by her side, held her hand, conveying tranquility and confidence. "Are you ready?" James asked, as the buzz of the eager crowd seeped into the dressing room. "With you by my side, I always am," Katie responded, a confident smile framing her face. She squeezed his hand, a gesture that had become a pre-show ritual for them. As Katie took the stage, James watched from the wings, his heart full of pride. The way she mastered the piano, with a passion that transcended technique, captivated everyone fortunate enough to hear her. The performance was a triumph. Ecstatic reviews soon followed, describing Katie as a rejuvenating force in classical music, and a pianist whose story of perseverance is as captivating as her keyboard skills. Social media buzzed with videos of her performances and testimonials from moved fans who felt a personal connection to Katie's journey. After London came Paris, Berlin, and New York, each city bringing new fans and new stories. Katie not only performed but also appeared on talk shows and interviews, where she shared her story of overcoming and resilience, inspiring people of all ages and backgrounds. On a rainy night in New York, after a particularly emotive performance at Carnegie Hall, Katie and James found themselves in a small Italian restaurant, an oasis of calm away from the city's hustle. "Do you realize how much you've changed so many lives?" James asked, as they shared a late meal. "Not just through your music, but through your strength." Katie reflected for a moment before responding. "I do feel it, yes. It's incredible to think that my music can touch people this way. But none of this would have been possible without you, James. You believed in me when I could barely believe in myself." James smiled, affection evident in his eyes. "Seeing you on stage, playing with so much heart, makes it all worthwhile. You are an inspiration, Katie." As the night progressed, both knew that beyond the applause and the stage lights, Katie's true success lay in the genuine connection she had established with her audience. A connection that reflected not just her skill as an artist but her integrity as a person. As they planned the next steps of her tour, with stops on other continents and new audiences to enchant, Katie's journey as a rising star was far from over. With each new city, each new stage, she solidified her place in the world of music, not just as a talented pianist but as a symbol of hope and renewal. As Katie's world tour gained increasing acclaim, the bond between her and James strengthened, intertwined with every note she played. It was on a starry night in Rome, after a captivating concert at the historic Sala Santa Cecilia, that James decided it was time to take a step forward in their relationship. After the concert, he suggested a walk through the illuminated gardens of Villa Borghese, away from the public eye and the press. The cool night air and the soft sound of water from the fountains created the perfect setting for such an intimate moment. "Katie, do you remember when we talked about the future, about hope, and about new beginnings?" James began, his voice blending with the whispers of the leaves. Katie, holding his hand as they walked, smiled, recalling that conversation. "Yes, I remember. You talked about how each challenge was a door to new possibilities." "Exactly," James said, stopping and turning to face her under the soft light of a lantern. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about how we've faced so many challenges together and how each one of those moments brought us closer to each other. You have transformed my life in ways I never imagined." Katie looked at him, her heart beating faster with the anticipation of what was to come. "James, you've changed my life too. You gave me strength when I needed it most and joy in times I didn't expect to find it anymore." James took a deep breath, pulling a small box from his pocket. He knelt down, opening the box to reveal a simple yet elegant ring. "Katie, these last journeys together have been the most incredible of my life. I love you more than I can express, and I would love to spend the rest of my life by your side. Katie, would you marry me?" Tears shone in Katie's eyes, reflecting the surrounding lights. "James, there's nothing I want more in the world." She extended her hand, letting him slide the ring onto her finger. "Yes, I will marry you." Embraced under the starry sky, they shared a moment of pure happiness, a commitment not just to each other, but to a shared future filled with music, love, and ongoing discoveries. As news of their engagement began to spread, congratulations came from all directions: family, friends, fans, and colleagues. The celebration of their love added a new layer of joy to the tour, transforming each of Katie's subsequent performances into a celebration not just of her music but also of their shared love. As they planned the wedding, both knew that no matter where life took them, they would face it together, strengthened by the power of their commitment to each other. And as the tour continued, each concert became not just a performance but a celebration of the love they had pledged to each other, a promise that would strengthen in the next stage of their lives. After the emotional proposal in Rome, Katie and James began planning for their big day. They decided they wanted a wedding that reflected their journey together. Something intimate, sincere, and filled with personal meaning. The idea was to celebrate love, not just with grandeur, but with the warm presence of people who truly mattered to them. One quiet afternoon, sitting in the garden of their temporary home in Florence, where Katie was rehearsing for her next concert, they made the guest list. "We should keep it small, right?" James suggested, handing a pen to Katie. "Yes, just our family and close friends. People who have been with us every step of the way," Katie agreed, starting to write names. "Johnny is definitely at the top of the list." "And what about the location?" James asked, as he helped organize the papers scattered by the light breeze. "I was thinking, maybe we could do something right here in Florence. It's a city full of art and beauty, just like our relationship," Katie proposed, her eyes sparkling with the idea. "Perfect," James smiled, loving the idea of getting married in a city that symbolized rebirth and beauty. "And the ceremony? Any preference for who should officiate? What about someone who understands our story? Maybe we could ask the conductor who worked with me in Vienna. He saw our relationship grow up close," Katie suggested, moved by the idea of incorporating elements of their shared life in music into the wedding. "I'll talk to him. I think he'd be honored," James agreed, noting another task in his planner. In the following days, the couple visited several venues in Florence, finally deciding on an old palazzo overlooking the Tuscan vineyards. It was the perfect balance of elegance and simplicity, a place that breathed history and romance. With the venue decided, they moved on to other details, choosing flowers, the menu for the banquet, and the musical selection for the ceremony. For each choice, they sought something that spoke directly to the heart, something that reflected their personalities and their love story. "How about lilies and white roses for the flowers?" Katie asked as they flipped through a local florist's catalog. "Perfect. Simple and elegant, just like you," James replied, kissing her forehead. When it came time to choose the music, Katie insisted on playing a piece herself. "I'd like our first dance to be to something I played, something I composed thinking about us." James was touched. "That would be incredible, love. I can't wait to dance with you to your music." With each detail being carefully planned and confirmed, the days leading up to the wedding seemed to pass by faster. The anticipation grew, as did the love and excitement between them. Guests from all over the world confirmed their attendance, eager to participate in this special moment in Katie and James's lives. As the date approached, the final preparations were completed, promising a celebration that would be remembered by all as a testament to the power of love and music in bringing people together. And as they finalized the music list and reviewed their vows, Katie and James knew that every aspect of their wedding was imbued with personal significance, celebrating not just the beginning of a new chapter in their lives, but also everything they had overcome together. The day of Katie and James's wedding dawned bright and clear in Florence, as if the city itself were celebrating the love they shared. The old palazzo chosen for the ceremony was adorned with subtle elegance, with white roses and lilies spread throughout the venue, exuding a sweet fragrance that mingled with a gentle early summer breeze. Guests began arriving early, murmuring in admiration as they were guided to their seats. Among them was Johnny, whose eyes shone with emotion as he took in the setting for the next chapter in his dear friend's life. James, dressed in a tailored suit that captured the essence of his understated elegance, was backstage, trying to contain his anxiety and anticipation. His best man, a longtime friend, offered some words of encouragement. "You're ready for this, James. She's the woman of your life." "I know," James replied with a nervous smile. "I've never been so sure of anything as I am now." Meanwhile, Katie was getting ready in a sunlit room of the palazzo, assisted by her bridesmaids. Dressed in a flowing wedding gown that captured the light with every movement, she looked ethereal, the embodiment of all the love songs she had ever played. Looking at herself in the mirror, she felt a wave of gratitude for everything she had overcome to reach this moment. "You're stunning, Katie," said her best friend and maid of honor, tears of joy shining in her eyes. Katie smiled, her happiness almost tangible. "Thank you. I feel like I'm living a dream." As the music began, a soft composition Katie had chosen for the moment, all eyes turned to her. With her father by her side, Katie walked down the floral aisle, each step bringing her closer to James, who waited at the altar with an expression of admiration and deep love. The conductor, who had become a mentor to Katie over the past few years, led the ceremony. Today, we celebrate not just the union of Katie and James, but also the journey that brought them here. May the music that united them continue to be the soundtrack of a life filled with love and discovery. The maestro's words rang true and profound, and as Katie and James exchanged their vows, promising love, respect, and mutual support, there wasn't a dry eye in the assembly. The kiss that sealed their union was a testament to all they had overcome and the hope for all that was yet to come. After the ceremony, as guests made their way to the reception, James held Katie's hand, whispering, "We did it, love. Together, we can face anything." "Yes, we can," Katie replied, her heart overflowing with love. As night fell and the wedding celebration honored Katie and James's love with dancing, music, and laughter, the couple knew this was just the beginning of many new chapters in their lives. And as they prepared to embark on their honeymoon, the world seemed filled with infinite possibilities. As the sun set over the tranquil beach of a remote island where James and Katie had chosen to spend their honeymoon, they walked barefoot along the sand, leaving footprints that were slowly erased by the gentle waves. The sound of the sea provided the perfect soundtrack for their reflections on the incredible journey they had shared. "I don't think I ever imagined my life would take this direction," Katie began, her soft voice blending with the murmur of the waves. "So many things happened, so many trials, but each challenge brought us closer, strengthened our love." James, looking out at the horizon where the sky met the sea, agreed. "It's true. Each obstacle seemed insurmountable at the time, but looking back, I see how each one was essential to bring us here. I wouldn't change a thing." They stopped, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. James took Katie's hands, intertwining his fingers with hers. "Do you think everything we went through, this whole journey, was fate? That we were destined to be together?" Katie smiled, the sea breeze gently stirring her hair. "I like to think so. That every note I played, every decision I made, led me to you. And even in the darkest hours, there was a light, a music guiding us to each other. I will always be grateful for that night I found you," James said, emotion evident in his voice. "You not only changed my life, Katie, you gave me a new life, a reason to love and dream again." Katie moved closer, resting her head on James's shoulder as they continued to watch the sunset spectacle. "And I am grateful for every day by your side, every moment we share. Music may have brought me back to the world, but love gave me a reason to stay and celebrate each new day." As the evening began to fall, James and Katie remained on the beach, embraced, reflecting on the past and dreaming of the future. They knew that life would still have its challenges, but they also knew that together they could face anything, strengthened by the unshakable love they had built. "What do you hope for the future?" James asked as the last light of day disappeared over the horizon. Katie looked at him with a spark of hope in her eyes. "I hope we continue to grow, to learn, and to love. That we make music together, not just with notes and melodies, but with every action we take, every decision we make." "That sounds perfect," James said, kissing her gently. They knew that no matter what the future held, their journey together was just beginning, a symphony of love and life that would continue to play for all the years to come.
So, if you're not subscribed yet, click on the subscribe button below and join our community. Thank you for your support and see you in the next videos.